Another thing that I've been talking about over and over again is the war effort. Operation Epstein's Fury is now at day 69. Okay? It's day 69 of Operation Epic Fury. If you've been in here since day one of Operation Epic Fury, or at least since the first week of Operation Epic Fury, you know that things have not been going well. I've been talking about it extensively, as a matter of fact. Yes, nice. And it turns out more and more people are finally coming to that conclusion as well, even though Donald Trump is the one guy who refuses to acknowledge it. I'm going to go pee while this runs.
More apparent contradictions from the Trump administration over the war with Iran. President Trump claimed the U.S. had, quote, won, though he also said no peace deal has learned. An American fighter jet fired on an Iranian oil tanker. The Pentagon says it was trying to slip past the U.S. blockade. Weijia Jiang is at the White House. Weijia, good morning.
Vlad, good morning, and good morning to everybody. We have heard this optimism from President Trump before and the threats that come with a lack of progress. Trump warns the U.S. will hit Iran with more attacks at a much higher level and intensity if a peace deal is not reached.
So I think we won.
Promoting a UFC match scheduled at the White House for next month, President Trump declared victory in another fight against Iran.
We've had very good talks over the last 24 hours. And it's very possible that we'll make a deal.
According to a report from Axios, White House officials believe they are getting close to an agreement with Iran on a one-page memorandum to end the war and start more detailed negotiations. The deal would include a moratorium on Iran's nuclear enrichment, the lifting of U.S. sanctions, and both sides ending restrictions in the Strait of Hormuz. An Iranian official said the proposal is being reviewed. Trump insisted Iran has already signed off on his key condition.
Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and they won't. And they've agreed to that.
Iran has not said that publicly, and Trump lamented its leaders have backed off past agreements.
We've had some good talks before, as you know, right. And all of a sudden the next day they're like, they forgot what happened.
After one day, the president paused his proposed Project Freedom after apparently only guiding very few ships through the Strait of Hormuz. The Pentagon said a U.S. Navy F/A-18 Super Hornet, like this one, launched from the deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln, continued to inform.
Yes, we are getting ready for another attack. Breaking. 5 U.S. Air Force KC-135 tankers have taken off from the UAE with at least 4 more tankers airborne over Israel and Jordan. One going dark with transponders off. Trump separately did not appear a scheduled press event with the Brazilian president that was set for over 3 hours ago with no explanation given. Project Freedom was an unbelievable up, says Matthew Petty. The blockade put time on Washington's side, but in the course of the weekend, Trump demonstrated that he was 1, impatient, 2, scared of markets, 3, unwilling or unable to protect the idea of Dubai. Explosions have been overheard over Tehran, from what I understand, but it's unclear whether or not those were related to like American and Israeli campaigns. Bahman Pier on Iran's Qasem Island targeted following an exchange of fire between the Iranian armed forces and the enemy, says Fars News. So I guess there's more updates on that since then. The idea of Dubai, yes, it's a joke. Several large transports or tankers have left the California AFB Air Force Base headed west today as well. So, yeah. Donald Trump, 7 days out from the Beijing summit, went back and forth on possibly securing a peace, an enduring peace, or going back to waging war with Iran. There was the Operation Freedom, Guardian, Prosperity, Freedom, whatever they call it. Where he was going to transit ships through the Strait of Hormuz with naval assets in tow. That lasted for about 24 hours, not even 24 hours. That was announced, and in 24 hours, it was discontinued. Donald Trump said, okay, we now have another deal on the table. We're going to be having a conversation with Iran again. And it turns out that Tehran did not like the conditions that America set forth. So America seemingly is bringing back the campaign, which didn't work from the start. We are on day 69 of monitoring the situation. Gas prices have reached alarming levels all around the country. Energy markets are screaming bloody murder. And yet God, I gotta stop saying day 69. An American official just told Al Jazeera the reports about preparations to resume Project Freedom are false. Do with that what you will. I don't know, says Bonser Berry. Wall Street Journal says Saudi Arabia and Kuwait lifted restrictions on U.S. military access to bases and airspace. The Trump administration is now looking to restart Project Freedom after it had paused it after 36 hours this week. U.S. officials said it isn't clear when that could happen, though Pentagon officials gave a timeline of as early as this week. Okay, why bring the counter back today, man? You know why, because I'm also a dumbass. Tasnim says sounds of several explosions heard near Qasem Island. And by the way, since then, Tasnim or Fars has said this was enemy campaigns in Qasem Island. So, yeah, there are currently 5 tankers in the air from Tel Aviv and 5 from UAE right now, with another 1 tanker over Iraq. There's also 1 tanker that has shut off its transponder. So everything points to America resuming Project Epstein's Fury, Project Epic Fortnite Freedom, whatever this iteration of the war efforts against Iran are called. Of course, there's also new reports coming from John Hudson, national security reporter for Washington Post, who has a scoop. Says a confidential new CIA analysis delivered to the policymakers this week concludes that Iran can survive the U.S. naval blockade for at least 3 to 4 months before facing more severe economic hardship, a finding that contradicts those hailing an imminent collapse. U.S. intel also indicates that Iran retains about 75% of its pre-war inventories of mobile launchers and about 70% of its pre-war stockpiles of missiles, per a U.S. official. This is increasingly becoming exactly like my Israel-Palestine, Gaza coverage, where we look at initial open source intelligence assessments. We analyze the Iranian strike capabilities by looking at the targets and looking at their success in terms of penetrating the Israeli security umbrella. And we make different we conduct analysis off of that information as opposed to the overwhelming majority of information coming from mainstream media. And that's the reason why at the Piker Broadcasting Service, I say you get tomorrow's news today, right? This assessment only confirms our analysis here. Our analysis here that has been conducted I've been talking about for months at this point, okay, for next month's news today, basically. If you were to look at the strike, if you were to analyze the strike capabilities of Iran by simply looking at how capable they are in successive strikes on Israeli soil, on the Gulf nations, and what targets they've been able to actually successfully hit, you would realize a very different reality exists on the ground as opposed to what people are hearing about in the Western world. U.S. intel also indicates that, this is great though, it's basically confirmation. The CIA is basically confirming what we have seen and what we've been talking about for the past 2 months now. Again, day 69. Basically since day 7, we've known that this American military campaign, this aerial bombardment campaign, was not succeeding in achieving any of the military objectives, as far as successfully attriting Iranian strike capabilities, right? U.S. intel also indicates that Iran retains about 75% of its pre-war inventories of mobile launchers and about 70% of its pre-war stockpiles of missiles, per a U.S. official. The regime has also been able to recover underground storage facilities and repair damaged missiles. This week, Trump painted a more dire picture of Iran's situation, saying their economy is crashing, their currency is worthless, and their missiles are mostly decimated. But U.S. intelligence offers a much more sobering assessment. One of the U.S. officials said they thought Iran's capacity to sustain prolonged economic hardship is far greater than even the current CIA estimate. The leadership has gotten more radical, more determined, and increasingly confident they can outlast the U.S. political will and sustain domestic repression to check any resistance inside Iran, the official said. Comparatively, you see similar regimes lasting years under sustained embargoes and air power-only wars. White House spokeswoman Anna Kelly defended the blockade's effectiveness. Iran was crushed militarily. Now they're being strangled economically and losing $500 million per day, thanks to the U.S. military's successful blockade of Iranian ports. This has been a spectacular cup, and anyone who is a little bit reasonable could see it from week one. Okay. At some point, you have to realize like there's not much daylight between Asmongold's base style reporting on the matter and a lot of mainstream media outlets that, have foundation for defending democracy folks on, or pro-war, war hawk neocons on their broadcasts over and over again. Democratic neocons such as Brett McGurk or Amos Hochstein, architects of the Gaza on the Democratic side, to go on CNN and deliver the exact same bullshit that the Trump administration is saying with a liberal spin on it. If you go to these places and if you hear from these people, of course they're going to say, no, we're doing a spectacular job. Mark Ames also has some choice words on this. The Team B counterpoint here is whatever the FDD Israel lobby says, just a few more blockade days plus a few more sorties and the defeated regime is over. And though they're always wrong, presidents have a funny habit of going for the best massage Team B intelligence. We don't even need to see the dust settling to recognize that FDD is a cutout for Israeli intelligence, and their goals are not the goals of advancing America's interests, okay? Their goals are to advance the interests of Israel. And it's very clear that the president and many in his closest circle are listening to these idiots. The White House has literally used FDD policy papers in their communications throughout this war. Okay? They recently hired a FDD analyst to be a part of the negotiations team. It's ridiculous. They're leaning further and further into faulty Israeli intelligence, like it's their last-ditch effort to salvage the war effort somehow. It's not working. It's been a spectacular failure. It's been a major humiliation for American force projection capabilities, and yet they keep leaning into it. Yeah, I responded to Tommy Vitor. These neocon lunatics think taking down the Iranian regime is worth risking the Strait of Hormuz being closed for 8 months. Meanwhile, gas prices go up exponentially, entire economies in Asia collapse, and fertilizer shortages lead to famine. I said, good thing they put one of the FDD guys on the negotiations team. We clearly weren't sufficiently representing Israel's interests before. Tommy Vitor says, an org backed by autocrats who don't give a fuck about democracy. Perfect. You mean they just got a Mossad agent in the negotiation talks? What do you mean just now? They've already had Israel's interests sufficiently being represented in those negotiations. Okay? And on top of that, they also have doing boss calls to Donald Trump with regular fucking frequency anyway. And on top of that, Israel blows up Beirut as they did yesterday in an effort to spoil the potential ceasefire. Yeah. Matt Petty says, at this rate, soon we'll be hearing that 110% of Iranian missiles survived the war. Yeah, the helpers.
Yeah.
Trump's new Iran negotiator is Israel's lobbyist who has denounced negotiations with Iran. Tapped to advise the special envoy for peace missions, Steve Witkoff, Nick Stewart previously condemned dealing with any of Iran's elected leaders. Okay, that's the guy.
Yeah.
Let's hear what he has to say about negotiating with Iran. This is the guy who was hired, by the way, to be a part of the Trump negotiations team this past week.
And I want to stay with you because this is Unga Week in New York City, the UN General Assembly, and Iran's new president, Masoud Pezeshkian, is running around New York, touting diplomacy, and I'm a reformer, and the media is magnifying that exactly as Iran had hoped. They even brought out Zarif from retirement, right? So there is this narrative that Iran is turning the chapter on, the butcher of Tehran, and there's a new president, there's a new reformer in town. Obviously, it's not. It shouldn't be much of a newsflash. Pezeshkian is a part of the theocratic, tyrannical, authoritarian government of Iran. Right? This man is not a reformer, and we shouldn't buy into that narrative because what it does is it throws us off our guard, and we think, oh, this is different. This is a new. What do you say to that? Because that impacts policy, right? If we think that we have an honest broker across the table, we are coming to the table with a completely different mindset, and I think it's important we disabuse people of that notion. Speak to that, and I think if anybody else wants to chime in on this too.
If Mr. Pezeshkian is a reformer, then I'm, Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah, next to Elliot Abrams, another fucking ghoul. But real who's who of demonic entities here. Oh, God, just warmongers of the highest order. Listen, this was before the Queen died, I think. So, yeah. In any case, the point here is America is already representing the interests of Israel, even if the Israeli interest in this circumstance very clearly diverges from American interests. America, as the hegemon, has a totally different set of interests and a totally different set of obligations to the rest of the world. Its number one reason for existence, is number one justification for 800 military bases around the world, is the idea that they can be anywhere all at once, anywhere around the world in a matter of 24 to 48 hours, and they can dominate anyone militarily if a country dares impede on the free flow of commerce. Okay? So either militarily or through diplomacy, America must maintain free flow of commerce through these routes like the Strait of Hormuz. And if they can't do this militarily, as they've shown they're incapable of opening the Strait of Hormuz militarily, they have to go the route of diplomacy. Okay? Their obligation is not just to the American domestic markets. Their obligation is not just to Americans. Their obligation is to the rest of the world, right? And they have failed in achieving this clear-cut, well-defined, long-standing objective. This is why I keep repeating over and over again that America might say they're isolationist. The American administration might say or claim that they're isolationist, but America touches everything around the world. Okay? They have an obligation to their partners in the Asian markets to ensure safe passage of oil tankers so that these Asian countries do not fall apart. Asian countries that are responsible for the overwhelming majority of component manufacturing that American and Western countries also utilize in their production. Okay? The global system of capitalism and international trade is designed to never allow for this kind of impediment to continue for a long period of time. Because if it does, everything collapses. We saw a version of this with COVID, right? But this is man-made. This crisis is directly born out of America's and Israel's military ambitions in Iran. But America and Israel have different interests here. Israel's goal is not to open the Strait of Hormuz. Israel doesn't give a fuck about opening the Strait of Hormuz. Israel doesn't care if the Gulf nations are crippled. Israel actually benefits if the Gulf nations are crippled, whereas the rest of the world does not. The rest of the world does not benefit if the Gulf is lit on fire or if the Strait of Hormuz is blockaded, right? America, as the hegemon, must open the Strait of Hormuz, must allow international trade to continue in this pre-blockade levels, in the pre-blockade, pre-crisis levels that we're now experiencing. Do you understand? This is why I say Israel and America do not have goals that converge in this circumstance, but diverge from one another, okay? There's friction. But the American administration acts as though there is no friction whatsoever. The American administration acts as a pliant admin that will be willing participants in whatever Israel's design is in the region. And that is where we arrive at this issue. There are plenty of people making the reasonable assessment on the intelligence side, whether it be the CIA, on the State Department side, plenty of generals that have explained over and over again to Donald Trump that if they continue along this journey, that the crisis will only grow. There's only one option out of this to stop the hemorrhage, to stop the bleeding, and that is diplomacy. Okay? Everything points in that direction. And yet, there's one country that is no longer just a junior partner in this coalition, but seemingly behaving like the senior partner, Israel, that does not want diplomacy to take place. They do not want a sovereign Iran. I've said this from day one. Israel's goals since day one was very clear. It is the complete destruction, or at least the balkanization, or at least a failed state in Iran, turning Iran into Libya. Okay? That was Israel's goal. And by way of lying to the American leadership, if you want to, say that was the reason, I'm sure that played a big role here. And by way of consistently sullying ceasefire negotiations or attempts at long-standing peace by blowing up Beirut and continuing to escalate militarily, Israel has made it virtually impossible for America to have any sort of reasonable negotiations with Iran until the United States of America says enough is enough and brings Israel to heel. Okay? Israel is the destabilizing factor here. It's not Iran. And now it seems like we're leaning in the direction of more warfare, more destabilization, more crisis. Once again, Iranian state media says the United Arab Emirates has now attacked Iran. This is Mehr. An explosion occurred at the Bahman Pier in Keshem during an exchange of fire between the Iranian forces and the enemy. And now they're saying it was the United Arab Emirates. Iran will dish out a heavy price to the United Arab Emirates. 100%. From their perspective, they have to create military deterrence to ensure that this stops. This is how states conduct themselves, okay? If the UAE is foolish enough to engage Iran militarily like this, thinking that America will defend them, Iran will stop at nothing to show them that that is not the case. Iran will pull out all the fucking stops to ensure that the United Arab Emirates understands that America is not capable of defending them. Here's Uncle Chunk Weigert on the Sean Ryan show talking about Israel's attempts at spoiling this deal.
And we haven't hit what I think is the worst part of the war that's coming up. If we don't get the hell out of there, this is going to be an economic collapse like people have not seen. So why is Israel doing this? Number one, they want to take southern Lebanon, and this is all a giant distraction. Number two, they want the Iranians destroyed so they can't fund Hamas, Hezbollah, or et cetera. So it's all about their interest, not our interest. But the parts people don't talk about, they just open up the Leviathan gas field. For the first time, Israel now has a source of energy. And after the war starts, Netanyahu goes and brags on air, well, now that all those the strait is closed and other things are foreclosed, you're going to have to rely on Leviathan and Israel.
Holy shit.
Okay. And when the world falls apart and we lose all of our allies, we lose NATO, we lose the Middle East, we lose everyone, Israel then says, we're your only ally. See, the rest of the world hates you. Well, why do they hate us? Because we did the shit you wanted us to do.
I think everybody sees what's happening. Everybody sees the negotiators being killed by Israel.
I'm not so certain that everybody sees what's happening. I think a lot of people are not paying attention at all, if I'm being real. I think a lot of people are totally deluded, understandably focused on their own day-to-day issues, and are not exactly aware. Their only experience with what's going on over there is the gas prices. They see the gas prices, they go, what the fuck is this? Why am I paying $70 more to fill up my tank? This is unbearable. What the hell's going on? Fix it. But it doesn't go beyond that. They don't really think about how we arrived at this predicament. I'll be real. And there are those who connect those dots, people like myself, and we get yelled at endlessly by those who want to keep the public confused, oblivious, sedated.
And everybody sees it but us, but we see it. But our leadership, this administration, Trump, they don't acknowledge it. Why would you?
At least they shift the blame over correctly to Donald Trump, because this is Donald Trump's spectacular fuck up, right? Donald Trump has played a major role in this fuck up. He is one of the primary responsible parties for the gas prices being the way that they are. But one must scratch the surface and look at who has also convinced Donald Trump that this would be a good idea. And therein lies the truth. It's absolutely Israel. Early reports and Donald Trump's statements, Marco Rubio's statements, caused people to recognize that reality. Even the New York Times' Maggie Haberman wrote extensively on the dynamic between the Israeli envoys and the Israeli intelligence and how it differed from America's homegrown intelligence assessment, whether it be the CIA or the entire intelligence community or Donald Trump's own generals telling him that this would be a devastatingly bad decision to go to war with Iran. But it didn't matter. You have to look at who stands to benefit from what's going on currently. The rest of the world is damaged. The rest of the world suffers a global energy crisis, destabilization, inflation everywhere as a direct consequence of the manufacturing base of the planet no longer able to receive the necessary energy so they can keep up with demands, so they can maintain a steady flow of supply.